It all started when I was young, reading Alice in Wonderland. In chapter 7, The Mad Tea Party, the Mad Hatter confronts Alice with a riddle. Why is a raven like a writing desk? I was pretty young. I had no idea how to solve this problem. Also, the internet was going to be coming about probably about 35 years after I was reading this, so I had no idea even what book to look in. It was something that I always wondered about, however. I was excited by the idea of echo that was chosen and felt that it would help me explain the importance of recognizing not only the echoes within my personal world of graphic design, but also the echoes from a lot of other things, particularly theater, dance, painting, film, and even science. For you, it might be radically different kinds of inspirations. In my third year of architecture school, I was asked by dorm friends to design posters and programs for dramatic productions. This eventually led to me being a designer of posters for the university, as well as the art director of the university yearbook, the Cornhusker. Here you see my cover from 1970 for the yearbook and a letterhead that I designed for my friends and I to get more work. I am in the middle there holding the T-square. As an architecture student, I was learning how to do graphic design without formal training and how to connect what I knew about architecture and tried to bring it into the world of graphic design. I thought about that riddle about the raven and writing desk several times in my life, particularly then, because I was worried about how I was going to be able to make things and do it well. One early influence that I depended on was Le Corbusier, one of my favorite architects. And I began to look at his two-dimensional work, particularly his paintings and his prints, as you see here on the right, and try to connect those back to my knowledge of three-dimensional work. As a student in 1970, I attended a performance of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar at the Nebraska Repertory Theater. My friends and I showed up, got our tickets at the box office, and we were told to wait out on the sidewalk. So we did that until all of a sudden, close to the beginning of the performance, a Jeep turned the corner, headed right toward the large group of people waiting to get in. In the Jeep were two tribunes, Flavius and Marulus. They began the play talking to some of the other people on the street that I now realized were members of the cast. They then told a bunch of combat uniformed soldiers to herd us into the theater. The play continued on that same vein. It was electric, chilling, and menacing. And I realized later on that I saw a play about ancient Rome recontextualized into an anti-war college campus at the height of the Vietnam War. I was fortunate to be at the 1983 Edinburgh Festival to see Achim Freier's Magic Flute, Mozart's opera. As the curtain rose, boos came from the audience. And they were shocked by the super graphic set as well as the costumed people wearing bright colors, some in clown makeup. Expecting an 18th century rendition, a lot of people loudly walked out. But I was energized by this whole thing, sitting up straight, not sure what was going to happen. This, again, was a heightened feeling of engagement I felt. I felt my own thinking was changing by this experience. I was very aware of the atmosphere that Freier had created. Another example, inspiration, is from the world of film. Mishima, art directed by Eiko Ishioka. Many of the sets in the film are extremely memorable. This is my favorite one. It is the Golden Temple. And you see in the background there the mountains done in the traditional Japanese manner on a flattened surface. And suddenly, two people walk onto the set, and you realize that this temple is extremely small. This puts it into the area of being a symbol. And it tempts us to ask, what is artifice and what is real? In many pieces of graphic work I did in the 70s and 80s, I began to experiment with combinations of content, comparing large and small things, transparent next to solid, Since most of these projects were promoting the wide variety of programs on public television and radio, they also happened to accurately depict real content that were on our services. Another inspirational example for me is the animated film Street of the Crocodiles. The film was made by the brothers Quay. It is based on a Bruno Schulz short story about an Eastern European town. I had read the story several times, but was not ready for this translation. They created an otherworldly place, hard to tell where it is, other than a unique location where a group of dolls and machinery go about their provocative business. The Quay brothers created a dark ambience. It is compelling, edgy, slightly frightening, but absolutely magnetic. One of my work responsibilities in public television was to design teacher and viewer guides to help explain program content in series such as Masterpiece Theater and Nova, the science series. This example is a teacher guide. It is made to help high school literature instructors teach Oliver Twist in the classroom. For this guide, I was determined to create an appropriate atmosphere. I filled the pages with a texture of marbled paper, which I had made myself, reminiscent of 1830s London books, and selected posters and advertisements from that period that are floating on the page. I also added illustrations, objects, and photographs from the production, all filling the pages to create this feeling of that time. I saw a performance at the Brooklyn Academy of Music of the Pina Bausch dance group in their dance Arienne. It began on a water-filled stage floor. The activity grows as a series of dancers enter and start sloshing around noisily. Suddenly, a hippopotamus ambles into the scene and moves around the stage. I physically reacted strongly, sat up straight. Other people thought it was a bold, unexpected interruption, and someone screamed near me. Another person stood up and held his head and was like mouth open. Most people just laughed out loud. As a collage artist myself, I've always been aware of the work of Kurt Schwitters, who took common pieces of paper and wood, often found in the street, in the trash, and transformed them into sublime art. He was moving items from where we expected them in the commercial milieu to now a new place. It makes us pay attention. It creates a surprise, a recontextualization. The Russian theorist Viktor Shklovsky wrote about this and called it ostranenie, which means defamiliarization, a method that favors the poetic over the prose and often shows objects in new and unfamiliar context. I believe it is the basis of much of contemporary art today. I discovered the collage method of working allowed me a quick way to create a complex interplay of type, image, scale, space, color, and texture. This poster on the left for a show of album covers of the British designer Vaughan Oliver, and the poster at right for a collection of paper company promotional booklets. Many of us have changed our way of thinking because of things we have discovered from the world of science. I always think of L. Liszewski, the great innovator of the early 20th century. His interest in science helps explain his use and arrangement of elements in his compositions. As the moon affects the tides on Earth, these forces are at work in compositions, bouncing off of each other, exerting magnetic forces on other elements, creating a four-dimensional world, where if the viewer blinks their eyes, the objects seem to have moved. I am constantly experimenting with the disruption of the Cartesian coordinates. Here, a poster for a show of contemporary rock posters, and a poster I did for a lecture I gave at Brown University about the history of printing. I feel the magnetic forces among these images and words that are floating in space, creating a tension with the edge of the page as well as with each other. I am inviting the viewer into an exciting space, which reflects the richness and complexity of the subject, representing the history of text and image seen through centuries of time. Because of my interest in these juxtapositions, which I believe spark new, inventive ways of working, I have always been drawn to what happened at Black Mountain College in North Carolina, a small school that lasted from 1933 to 1957. It was a pinball machine of inspirational interactions. The teachers and students were a wide variety of innovators in their areas of artistic endeavor, all open to crossing boundaries. These images are from Rob Rauschenberg and Jacob Lawrence. But since we cannot be at the Black Mountain College of the 40s and 50s, we must rely on finding what is going on near us. Open our eyes, our brains, our ears, look for the connections, and discover that memory binds all artistic activity together. As a young designer, I had to learn how to make things clear, accessible, and appropriate. I learned how to structure information, and most often that structuring is apparent in the final piece, as you can see here in this poster I did for an exhibit of the magazine covers of Ray Comey, where my typography on the right echoes the image of his architectural magazine cover. It is simply a dialogue between me and Ray Comey. Or, when possible, the designer can go much further, creating an atmosphere that plays with the full range of light and dark, stillness and activity, quiet and loud, of unexpected juxtapositions, as seen in this poster for an exhibit of my collection of record album covers by Emmett McBain. I was thinking of being in a room during a saxophone solo by Pee Wee Ellis, whose passages are often louder and bigger than the room itself. I encourage all of us to seek inspiration, to enrich the possibilities for our work, to change direction, to pay attention to the echoes emanating from different kinds of arts, certainly those which are outside our usual orbit, by finding the connections. These influences from film and theater, dance and science have certainly enriched my understanding of what is possible in my work. When I am working, I am not trying to make graphic design like Paul Rand, April Greiman, or Alexei Brodovich. I am trying to make graphic design like Bach's cello suites, or Antoine Predoc's building at the Nelson Arts Center in Tempe, Arizona, or a Betty Saar assemblage, or the Kurosawa film Seven Samurai. We may not be able to logically answer the riddle, why is a raven like a writing desk? But we can feel the answer in our own work.